Hello listeners, I ALKA TIWARI welcome you all to Ensemble. Today's topic for discussion is flood. Flood is a state of high water level along a river channel or on coast that leads to inundation of land which is not normally submerged. Flood is an attribute of physical environment and thus is an important component of hydrological cycle of a drainage basin. Flood is a natural phenomenon in response to heavy rainfall, but it becomes a hazard when it inflicts loss to the lives and properties of the people. Types of floods. There are four principal types of floods: riverine, estuarine, coastal, and man-made. Riverine floods are divided into slow rising kinds resulting from rainfall or snowmelt and the more abrupt flash floods caused mainly by intense thunderstorms. Estuarine floods usually result from the combination of a tidal surge at sea caused by storm force winds and river flooding caused by rainstorms inland. Coastal floods are caused by tropical cyclones and other severe sea storms or by tsunami waves. Finally, various catastrophic causes can be identified, such as dam burst or the effects of earthquake or volcanic eruption. Man-made floods. Man-made floods can be caused by those anthropogenic activities which disturb the natural hydrological cycle so that they lead to inundation of areas not usually submerged by water. Causes of floods. The various conditions responsible for floods are: meteorological conditions include heavy rainfall, cloudbursts, cyclones. Physical conditions include narrow outlets, large catchment areas, lack of well-developed drainage channel, siltation and raising of channel, presence of unconsolidated soil, blocking effect of landslides, meandering. Human impact includes construction of dams and reservoirs, bursting of dams, deforestation, faulty slope practices, construction of embankments. Impact of floods. Medical, public health and nutritional consequences of floods. The impact of floods upon human health and nutrition is more serious in not so well-off countries. Death is obviously the most serious health effect. Characteristically, it occurs by drowning due to impact, falling trees, collapsing building, etc., or due to exposure and isolation. Injury in the form of physical trauma and associated wound infection has similar causes. Other health effects include respiratory diseases due to exposure, enteric diseases due to inadequate sanitation and water supply, diseases associated with ecological changes in the habitat of rodents, insects, etc., and malnutrition with associated high levels of infant mortality when food sources are destroyed. Consequences of floods for agriculture. Major flooding, especially that associated with cyclones, can lead to serious destruction in the agricultural sector of the economy, which may be the principal source of domestic and foreign earnings. High winds, torrential rains, and the storm surge associated with cyclones that make landfall in coastal agricultural areas may have a variety of effects on plants, including defoliation and stripping, snapping of limbs, trunks, and stems, bending and whipping back of stems, and lifting and exposure of roots, especially where soils and root systems are shallow. Falling branches and trees may damage or smother understories of lower growing crops, while flooding that lasts for more than 1 or 2 days may kill crops and perhaps cover their remains with deposited sediments. In essence, the effect of floods on agriculture may be summarized as crop and livestock loss, seed, root stock or breeding stock loss, income and employment loss, and loss of production potential. Impact of floods on housing. The effect of floods and cyclones on housing may be profound. First, while all buildings decay, frequent buildings can accelerate the decay process by giving rise to salt effervescence, wet rot, or other damaging phenomena. Secondly, a wooden building will float upright because its center of buoyancy is above its center of gravity. Thirdly, the weight of concrete below water is reduced by half and hence concrete strip foundations are easily more displaced. Finally, air pockets trapped in any cavity of a building may lead to devastating bursts if compressed. Flood management. Reduction of runoff. The most effective way of flood management is the reduction of runoff by inducing and increasing infiltration into the ground in the catchment area. This can be done by large-scale afforestation with trees that generate larger amounts of litter. Reducing flood peaks by volume reduction. The flood peaks can be reduced by a reduction in the volume of water by resorting to engineering approaches such as construction of storage reservoirs and detention basins. Such storage reservoirs impound enormous amount of water during flood periods and thus reduce the volume of water carried by the rivers. Reducing flood levels. The flood levels can be reduced in various ways. Stream channelization. The channels serve as temporary storage and holds water as the flood waves move downstream. In this way, the severity of flood is reduced. Channel improvement. Channel improvement by deepening, widening, straightening, lining and clearing out of vegetation and debris increases the flood conveyance capacity of the rivers. Flood diversion. Flood diversion implies diverting and spreading the flood water in marshes, lakes and depressions along the railway lines and highways and spreading it thinly over paddy fields and desert drylands. Protection against inundation. To protect the area against inundation is by construction of embankments to keep the water from flowing into inhabited or cropped areas. Floodplain zoning (FPZ). The identification of floodways in relation to land use detailed maps of flood-prone areas are prepared after studying flood cycles. Some areas are more prone to flooding and in some areas the frequency of flood is quite high. These zones are identified and demarcated and necessary control is exercised regarding land use. Flood forecasting. Advanced information about flood also plays a key role. Losses due to flood, especially of human life and livestock, can be considerably reduced by flood forecasting and early warning to the affected areas. Water diversion. The government has also toyed with the idea of diverting excess water from flooded rivers to perennially drought-hit areas. The national perspective for water resource development has envisaged linking of the Himalayan rivers to those in the peninsular India. Contemporary floods. The recent Bihar floods. Floods in Bihar is more man-made than monsoonal. In the last 2 weeks, it has been flooded. Bihar received well below normal rainfall. In the last 1 week, it had a rainfall deficiency of 40%, while the week before that, between 11th August and 17th August, it received almost 30% below normal rainfall, and yet it has seen widespread flooding in and around Patna and some other areas. The flooding happened for two main reasons. First, there were widespread rainfall in the foothills of the Himalayas during this period, and the rivers flowing from those areas like Rapti, Sarda or Ghagra were carrying excess water by the time they reached Bihar. The other reason was the sudden release of large amounts of water from Bansagar Dam, MP, into the Son River that travels through South Bihar before meeting the Ganga. While little could have been done about the excess flow of Himalayan rivers, the release of water from Bansagar Dam could have been managed better. Data from the Madhya Pradesh Water Resource Department website shows large volumes of water were discharged from the dam over a 3-day period starting 18th August when the reservoir got very full. Very little water was released before that, even though the reservoir level was swelling and there were forecasts of more rains in central India. Water officials in the central government say that had the water been released phase-wise, ignoring the tendency to hoard water in the reservoirs, the situation could have well managed. The tragedy has once again highlighted the need to have more consultative decision-making process on operations of large and medium dams that have an impact across state boundaries. It has also brought back the focus the way Bansagar is being managed. A big interstate project like Bansagar usually has a reservoir regulatory committee with representation from all the concerned states. This committee decides on operational issues including the time and quantity of water to be discharged. The Sardar Sarovar project or the Damodar Valley project have such committees. Officials say that in the case of Bansagar, however, this regulatory committee has not been constituted because of objections from the Madhya Pradesh government, which apparently claims the project as its own. Bihar and Uttar Pradesh therefore have no say on when or how much water is released from the reservoir. The two states do have a representation on the Bansagar Control Board that was constituted when the project was initiated in the early 1970s, but this board's mandate is restricted towards the construction and expansion of the project. It does not deal with operational issues, officials say. UP, Bihar and MP were devastated by floods in August this year. The main reasons were heavy rainfall in Himalayan foothill region, while UP and Bihar at times of flood had under normal rainfalls recorded. Causes of contemporary floods. The rivers bring heavy segment load from catchments. These, coupled with inadequate carrying capacity of rivers, are responsible for causing floods. Drainage congestion, erosion of river banks, and obstruction of free flow in river silting in deltaic areas. Other general causes. About 75% of the annual rainfall in India is concentrated in 3 to 4 months of the monsoon season. As a result, there is very heavy discharge from rivers during the period, causing widespread floods. Cyclones and cyclonic circulations and cloudbursts cause flash floods and lead to huge losses. Storm surges and coastal inundation, meandering tendency of rivers, urban flooding. In the cities and the towns, there is a recent phenomenon caused by increasing incidence of heavy rainfall in a short period of time, indiscriminate encroachment of waterways, inadequate capacity of drains, and lack of maintenance of the drainage infrastructure. For example, Chennai floods. Urban floods. Urban floods was a recurrent problem this year with several instances like Gurgaon floods, Mumbai floods, and the most disturbing Chennai floods. No doubt there was a heavy rainfall in these regions to contribute to the process, but the fault mainly lies in poor urban planning, which had aggravated the situation. Fault in planning. The case of Chennai. The trend of reckless illegal construction that has shut outlets for water, at least 300 water bodies have been converted into residential areas. Most waterways, tanks, and reservoirs are choked with silt and their flow channels, and banks have been encroached upon. Disconnected storm water drains preventing overflow from lakes and reservoirs to go straight into the sea, thereby causing flooding on roads. Such disaster could have been prevented through planning, curbs on occupation of water bodies, and pre-monsoon desilting of drains and water channels. A key factor that should have been taken into account is that the city needs an intricate drainage system to match its tremendous development. This is a must task for the government to implement the real solution, keeping water bodies free of construction and habitation. That's all for today. Thank you for staying tuned.